Welcome to Breaking Points, where Siegheir, aka Siegheil, aka Saagar Enjeti, continues to hold water for the Trump administration. He is a completely discredited conservative who voted for Trump despite the fact that he knew the tariffs were coming. So he's pro-tariff, and he just had a baby. And his main complaint about having a baby is that the prices for these cribs have gone up. Yet he voted for Trump because he thought he was going to be the economic genius that would lead to a better lifestyle for him and his family. And just like most magats, they're fucking around and finding out and realizing that Trump is a complete disaster economically. He's a complete disaster on all ends. But Saagar, at every moment of this 30-minute video is going to sound like a clown. I'm going to go to random parts of the video and we can listen to this retard make his case.
In my opinion, should have been deported a long time ago, but whatever, okay? We are where we are today. Do I think he should be sent to Uganda? No, all right? Even Costa Rica doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm sure we should go through the process. I think his asylum claim is bullshit, in my opinion, because the vast majority of these asylum claims are bullshit, especially in a country which dramatically less violence. He can't really fear as much now. Perhaps his fear is from the government. I guess it's a different story. Again, we can litigate all of that in court. So I'm going to put my cards there very closely on the table. But again, at a basic level, you cannot have a society where if you have lived here for over a decade and you cannot present yourself in English, you cannot be a citizen. Now, the point about being able to assimilate is actually the opposite. Because the problem is we have now vast numbers of illegal immigrants and others who come to the United States and have pockets where English is not spoken. That is not acceptable. And the even more broad point, very importantly, is about not only assimilation, but also the economic value. Yes, I understand. It's very hard for liberals to talk about this. But when you're talking about the addition of new entrants into your country, you need to have an assurance that those people will be able to stand on their own feet.
And he does. Saagar, he does.
Okay.
Abrigo Garcia is not taking any welfare. He worked construction and other trade jobs, so he was very capable of standing on his own feet. And the trades are a net positive for society. So even though, Saagar thinks that people that claim asylum are bullshit, which this is a silver spoon guy whose parents came over from India to the U.S. And this guy's saying that somebody else in the trades is bullshit because they don't have the same academic pedigree as him, because they don't speak English as well as him. That's his rationale. He's saying that asylum is bullshit when he's escaping what is a self-proclaimed dictator in El Salvador who has a prison that is ripe with human rights abuses. This is who Saagar is saying that he's saying that this state is a good state, that it's a safe place for Abrego Garcia to go, and clearly he had to flee that region.
Is he on welfare?
No, but note what you just said. Note what you just said specifically about sheet level apprentice. That's part of the reason I said day level work laborer. And if you also look previously, hanging out in a Home Depot parking lot where he was arrested in 2019 is the quite literal definition of day laboring. Now, when you put when you put that together, and on top of
better
lack
himself
of
and achieve a more stable job,
on top of lack of English proficiency, it is obvious that that question should be asked: how can this person be allowed to stay in the United States?
This is irrelevant. Abrego Garcia multiple times had been stopped in Nashville. He had multiple of his construction co-workers in the car. The cops stopped him and then they let him go. 2019, they arrested him. They allowed him to continue going through the asylum process. At every step in the process, he was abiding by the law. So he may have come in quote-unquote illegally, but he was absolutely going through the legal process to obtain protected status, which he did. Now, you can bring up that, he shouldn't have been here to begin with. That doesn't have anything to do with the fact that the Trump administration right now sent him to CCOT. They claimed he was a human trafficker multiple times. They said they would prove it in court. They haven't put out any evidence to the public to suggest that he is a human trafficker. They haven't put out any evidence to suggest that he was an MS-13 leader. And then now, after defaming him on the national stage, after sending him to a prison ripe with abuses, with human rights abuses, they want to send him to Uganda, another place that is ripe with human rights abuses. That's his entire argument, that because he doesn't speak English, that somehow that the Trump administration is not doing more wrong than him because he entered the country illegally. He's more concerned about the guy entering the country illegally over the fascist regime doing whatever they can to this resident of the U.S., ignoring court orders. That's what he's not concerned about. That he's concerned about Abrego Garcia. Conservatism is a mental illness. Let's go to the end of the cult.
Like, it's not like, this is my point.
Yeah, but
my point
is
if
working.
he were
Like,
to get,
I don't know what more you want from
what
him.
People who worked aren't on welfare. That's, come on. Like, look, 40% of the country's on food stamps right now, as if they're not all working. Like, that's my point. Is that if you have a low wage and you're unable to actually provide for yourself,
there's no indication that he's some, like, bottom feeder who can't support himself. Not that I even think of people in that way. So it's just, to bring it back, I don't get how you can look at this story and not be first and foremost horrified by the abuse of power by this government against people who are genuinely powerless in this system, and be concerned about what that means for all of us, immigrant and non-immigrant alike.
I think, as I've said, I take your point, and to the extent it has affected Americans, I've spoken out against it. I do think the Trump administration's actions have not only been outrageous, but deeply damaging to the cause that I actually support. And just to wrap it all together for what you were saying.
Yeah.
You were saying, I think that all immigrants are bad for the country. No, I don't think that. I think that more immigrants would be bad for the country. When I say, could I conceptually...
This guy is an immigrant. He's a son of immigrants, and he's saying that more immigrants are bad for the country. This is the classic immigrant crabs in a barrel, point blank. This is somebody who got here through his parents, not through his own merit, not through his own education, through the work of somebody else. That's why he was born here. Because let's be real, if he was born in India, he wouldn't be here in the U.S. Saagar would be another deadbeat on the side of the roads of whatever small town in India, if you weren't born here in the U.S. So you have this son of immigrants saying that immigrants or more immigrants are bad for the country. He wants a moratorium on immigration since he's the one that made it in.
Could I conceptually see a pathway to citizenship? Perhaps, if paired with stringent enforcement, very high standards for who those people were, and no more future immigration. All of these things are actually non-contradictory, because what they come towards is to try and have a society which can actually hash out its differences and have a civic understanding, and not be one of ethnic pockets which creates huge strife. Basically, it degrades our overall social...
He wants a society that can hash out its differences when he's closing the door behind the rest of society. Idiotic.
Social fabric, which I believe is the current system as it is right now. Deportation and enforcement is very important. Until I see any particular movement on that, that's why we shouldn't even entertain so-called pathway to citizenship talk. And especially if it were to be paired with the current endorsement of the system, which brings some 1.5 million people, new people, into the country every single year. All that would do, in my opinion, is pour gasoline on all of the fire. Individually, much of these things work together. Part of the reason why the Republican Party is where it is today, of no amnesty, and basically broke the 2013 consensus, is because it seems like the amnesty always happened, like it did under Reagan, and then the deportation and the enforcement continues to slow, as while the INS Act of 1965 remains in place, with the current USCIS numbers that are put into place, which brings some 1.5 million people on over and over and over again, and with the highest foreign-born population since the early 1900s, which I will remind you was followed by a massive immigration restriction. There were a lot of problems with that bill. It was explicitly racist, and it kind of caused the Japanese to go away from us. I don't believe in racial quotas or any of that to be implemented, but it had a lot of net social benefits, actually, if you look at the way that we had assimilation over some 40-year period. And I do think that people need to grapple deeply with the fact that we have currently part of our social fabric and destruction is not just economic. A huge part of it is civic, and it comes down to the fact that we have millions of people who entered this country illegally and are somehow, seen as more American, than the rest of us, or better, actually, citizens. Because that's the way that a lot of the Democratic leaders actually even talk about them. I mean, I saw Amy Klobuchar and others. It's like a quasi-system. And actually, as someone who is a child of an immigrant, it's offensive, to say that we're somehow, like, better than others. I hate this whole model minority thing that people always talk about with Indians. It's like, no, that's preposterous, because it's saying that, like, we're better than the people who are already here. No, we're all the same. And we should strive to actually all.
You don't think we're all the same. That's why you want to ban immigrants from other nations. You want a complete moratorium on immigration. So clearly you don't think we're all the same. And on top of that, you definitely do not think that undocumented immigrants are the same. You don't think that they share the same humanity, because initially Siegheir was not seeing any issue with sending Abrego Garcia to CICOT, despite there being no due process for this. He was completely okay with the Trump administration using the Illegal Alien Enemies Act to send 200 people to CICOT, 70% of which had not committed a single crime. That's who he is. He doesn't see these people as actual people. And then he's projecting that on the Democratic Party. He's saying that the Democratic Party are elevating immigrants, and they don't see immigrants the same as regular born Americans. Meanwhile, it's him that does not see immigrants the same as Americans, which is why he wants a moratorium on immigration, because he thinks that immigrant culture is poisoning society. He's the one that is okay with, Abrego Garcia being sent to CICOT. He changed his mind now about him being sent to Uganda, but he's completely fine with the Trump administration exerting any sort of power over this situation. He's completely okay with that. Anyway, that's it. Saagar is like a complete fool. He is a pseudo-intellectual who's read a lot of books or had books summarized through ChatGPT, and he thinks he has an understanding of these books, but there's a reason you sit down and read a whole book. And it's so that you don't miss the nuances of the points that the books are trying to make. This is a guy that quotes books all the time and misses the actual meaning or the message that the author was actually communicating. And then walks away with lack of understanding. And then because he can talk with authority, he thinks that he is a subject matter expert on these issues when he's not. He's clueless. Anyway, later.